Excellent. Welcome everybody to Fork in the Road. I am Rusty Gaylord, and it is Wednesday, the 13th of October. Happy to have you with us live today. I have well, as you know, Fork in the Road is a conversation with people about the decisions they've made in life that have shaped their life. Because it is the decisions that make all of the difference in your life. What you decide to do, what you decide not to do. So super happy to have with me today Tony Martignetti. And Tony is a trusted advisor, entrepreneur, idea generator, and people connector. He brings together practical experience, formal training, and extreme curiosity to elevate leaders and equip them with the tools to navigate through change and unlock their true potential. There's a lot more about Tony, but I'm going to just kind of give you a little bit of background. We'll talk more about this, but he was the founder before he became the founder and chief inspiration officer of Inspired Purpose Coaching. He was a finance and strategy executive with experience working with some of the world's leading life sciences companies. He also managed small businesses and ran a financial consulting company along the way. He's a host of a podcast, The Virtual Campfire, and the author of Climbing the Right Mountain, Navigating the Journey to an Inspired Life. Super happy to have Tony with us today. So Tony, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Rusty. This is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here with you. So let's just start off by telling us a little bit about your journey through life, because you've done a lot of different things, and you've ended up here, and I'm sure there were some key decisions along the way, but just give us a little thumbnail sketch of what you've done in the past and how that contributed to you being here and doing the work that you're doing today in the world.
Well, how much time do we have? No, I mean, it's really been an interesting journey to getting here, and I'm grateful for all the different forks in the road, if you will, that have gotten me here. And one of the first ones that I think about is the moment that I shifted gears from the high-tech industry into the biotech industry, because I wasn't really known. I didn't know much about the space, at the time. And for someone to take a risk on me to come into this industry as an unknown, because obviously there was a barrier to entry of not knowing the industry, to have someone take a chance on me and to allow me to have the opportunity to work as a finance person inside of this organization that was, in my opinion, one of the best in the industry at the time. I felt as though I was entering a world that I had no clue how to speak the language. I didn't know anything about clinical trials, different phases of development. But one thing I had for certain that I was really passionate about was the idea that what I was going to be getting involved with was going to help people. It was going to help patients, and it was going to drive science. So I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose at the time. But definitely this element of feeling like an outsider coming in. And then maybe that was what was needed at the time.
Yeah. So Tony, the thought that comes to my mind as you're talking about that is, what we would today call imposter syndrome, right? I don't think we use that word as much back in the day, but I'm curious your thoughts about that. Like, as you look back on it now, I mean, certainly there were things you didn't know, right? Of course, you're entering in a new industry. Did you think about it, or as you think about it now, would you think that's imposter syndrome, or do you think that's just the normal ramp of beginning something new?
Yeah, it's funny when I think about that person who I was at that point. There was definitely an anxiety, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was imposter syndrome as much as I've experienced that much more later on in my career. At that point, it was more of an excitement than anything else. There was an element of, wow, here's an opportunity to really learn a lot. I think it had a lot to do with the stage of my career, because I was a young person at the time who had a few years of experience, but I was really at that point where I didn't know a lot, and I was really open to exploring. So to me, I was ready for the fire hose, I guess. So coming into that space, I started to map out a plan for myself to say, how I'm going to embrace this is I'm going to actually learn as much as I can by
Mm.
being the beginner, by being the person who asks the questions. Even if I look a little bit like of course, that's the answer. I liked the idea that I could come in and be coming from a different perspective. So I
Yeah.
embraced it in some sense.
I think that's so interesting that you say that, because there's this, uh, the story that we tell ourselves makes so much difference, right? You can tell yourself,
Mm,
look at all the things I don't know, and I'm embarrassed about that. I'm trying to hide it. I'm trying to, polish up my skills so people don't know I'm the beginner.
yeah,
Or you can go down this other path of, I am the beginner. That's just
yeah,
who I am. And you're accepting that. And rather than make that a bad thing, you can say, well, maybe there's some benefit in this, right? There's certainly benefit for you because you get to learn and
mhm,
grow along the way. But there may even be benefit to others around you as you ask these seemingly naive questions,
yeah,
but they may get people to think about something in a different way. So just that, take
yeah.
accepting where you are and moving with it seems like that really works for you in that moment.
Yeah, and as you say that, there's something about that that got me thinking. It actually helps to celebrate the person in front of you, to say like, "I'm really intrigued by you. Or I want to know more about what it is that you do," and like it shows a really genuine interest in them. And by doing so, that helps them to see that you're trying to get the best out of them by having them share, not because you're like trying to drag them into your, oh, tell me all the things that you need to share about this project or what have you. But it's more about, I'm really interested. I want to know more about what you do and how you do it, so
Mm-hmm.
that I can help serve you better, so that I can be better at my job, which is to help support you as, your finance partner, as the person who's supposed to, help you to do the thing you do, as the enabler of your science, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that's where I generally got a lot of people to open up to me and be a partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great, right? It's the humility of, I don't know anything. There's things here I can learn from you, and the genuine, right? Genuine
Yeah.
interest in another person. I think that
Mm,
there's so much to be gained by being genuine, being authentic. Yeah,
exactly.
and yet somehow we've been trained that that's not the way to approach work, right? That you want to approach
Yeah.
work as if you're impenetrable and you know all the answers and you're
Yes.
invincible and all of that, right? It's like, but who is that? Nobody's that way.
Yeah.
And so that gets back to this imposter syndrome idea. It's like the more you're trying to be that person, no wonder you feel like an imposter. But
Yeah.
being willing to be open and genuine and authentic with people of, hey, you're really good at this and I would love to learn from you, or,
Yeah.
this is new to me, and being open about that, that can go a long way.
The know-it-all does not, get by. The person, the learn-it-all, is the one who is really the one who advances and really makes stuff happen. And I always come
Yeah.
back to Satya Nadella's, his shift of Microsoft and where he able to turn things around because he came from that place of, we're going to adopt the learning mindset. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah.
And this is way before he became. This is way early days before Microsoft brought Satya on. So
Hmm. Fascinating.
yeah,
Well, you mentioned earlier, when I was asking you about imposter syndrome, you said you bumped into that later, and I'm curious if that's something that you're open to talking about, and
of course.
how you worked through that, because we're talking about decisions here, but that's a real decision. It's not always an external change. Sometimes it's an internal piece about confronting and looking at what's going on with me and what do I decide to do with that. So if you're open to sharing about that, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, this has shown up so many times in my life along the way, because you always want to be showing this face of like, I'm strong, or I'm this person who's got it all put together. In reality, we don't have it all put together. Nobody does. Nothing is as it seems, and I think that's what we all start to face as we get more educated, more aware of the world around us, in our own
Mhm.
internal landscape, if you will, and one of the things I'll share the story of my journey into coaching. I'm kind of leapfrogging. There's a few other stories along the way that I can share, but my journey into coaching was by far one of the most imposter syndrome moments of my life,
Hmm.
because you come from this place of having a lot of success in the corporate world. And then all of a sudden you're saying to yourself, like, hey, I'm going to go into this world that I know nothing about, little experience about. And people, would see me as, why would I want to coach with this guy? Why would I work with this guy? And I say to myself, like, who am I to do this?
Yeah.
And so I had to go down this journey of really self-exploration, of seeing who am I really, and what am I all about? How do I create myself in the light of, like, what is the journey that brought me to this place that now creates the value that I create for other people? And it didn't happen immediately. It was a journey that took me a period of time of fits and starts, experiments, and many conversations, many no's. And eventually you get yourself over that period of saying, like, well, I shouldn't say you get over it. Imposter syndrome always is there. There's always an element of it being a feature of who you are, but you build a confidence about who you are and about who you serve. And that refinement is what gets you over that ability to act in the face of feeling that.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I'm thinking about as you're talking about that, Tony, is this question of, like, what do you do when you don't know the answer, or
Yeah.
what do you do when you don't know what to do? And I think that's
Mm.
what that's kind of what you're getting at. That's at least what I hear anyway, as you're talking about this, which is this question of, hey, I want to be a coach, but who am I to do this? And what kind of background do I
Yeah.
have? And what are people going to see in me? And it's in those moments of uncertainty, you've got a decision about, what do you do? Do you run
Yeah.
away? Do you plow forward just kind of blindly? Or do you take a moment to do some of the internal work and the reflection and the introspection about, what are your strengths? What are you
Mm.
nervous about? And how do you manage yourself so that you can move forward? So there's
Yeah.
so much about your journey here you're describing that just resonates with me, because I've been on my version of what you described, but I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts on that.
So there's so many ways I could approach this, and then one of them is that, as you know, being a finance person, I always think about this from the perspective of, first of all, there's this measured risk. You have to take the measured risk around any action you take. You put a plan in place. You know that there's an element of, this plan's not going to necessarily play out exactly as I intend it to be, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But you have to understand, what risks am I willing to take to go in this direction? And before you take that first step in the direction of that plan, you have to also think about, what am I bringing to the table? What am I comfortable with? What do I really want as I move forward from here? So the idea of taking those first few steps is the hardest part of it all. You
Yeah.
put a plan in place, say, I want to get this goal accomplished, but the first thing you have to do is understand, okay, if this doesn't work out, what am I willing to do to correct the course, change things in different directions? And am I okay with failure if it does show up?
So can I ask you about that? Because I think this is the crux of where people get stuck,
Mhm.
right? Some people might do that analysis you just described, looking at,
Yeah.
what are the first steps? What do I bring to the table? What do I do if I fail? And they say, this is just too much, or I'm too nervous about the failure. I don't think I can handle it. And they back off and they say, I'm not making that choice. So how
Yeah.
did you navigate that? How did you get through that and actually decide to move forward?
Yeah. Takes a bit of courage to just take that first step and go into action, and trust that it'll all work out. That if you have this confidence and the ability that something is gonna, you're going in the direction of where your purpose is showing you to go, of where something is leading you towards, that even if you make a ton of mistakes in the process of doing those things, of getting there, ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to learn so many things from those failures and the missteps, that eventually you're going to start to emerge with all of the things that you are meant to do. They come
Hmm.
from all of those experiments, right? As you take those steps, they start to say, okay, this, maybe not that, or maybe a little more of this. And that's where we're headed towards. And it starts to get to you realize that um, that your original plan wasn't exactly 100%, but
Yeah.
you're getting closer. But there's
Yeah,
these
the
hints.
trust piece I think is super interesting that you're talking about, because it's trusting not necessarily that you, like you said, not necessarily that your original plan is going to work
Mm,
exactly, but in the big arc that you said you're following in something that you feel passionate about or you feel pulled towards, and
yeah,
then the big arc that you will navigate and reach that, overcoming all the obstacles and challenges and learning and growing along the way, because of course that's going to happen, but
yeah,
trusting that you will still be, put successful, but I put that in air quotes because
yeah,
it's not about successful in terms of achieving that specific outcome that you identified, but successful in terms of moving forward and growing and getting closer and closer to what it is that's meaningful and purposeful to you.
yeah. And one of the things that comes to mind as you describe this is this idea that like there are clues that are showing up. The inspiration is the thing that comes to mind.
Mhm.
The Throughout your day and throughout your weeks and throughout your time, you'll see these moments that say, I'm lit up by this. This is something that's connecting with a motivation, a connection with something that's getting me excited. And I need to take note of that, because that's something that is telling me lean into that, lean
Mhm.
into more of that. As my quote is, inspiration is a communication with your soul's purpose. So
Mm.
as you have those inspiration points, those points that light you up, take note of that, because it
Yeah.
means something. And it might doesn't necessarily mean that that thing that lights you up is going to be easy, but it definitely means that it's something you should maybe take some more action towards, because it's
Mhm.
telling you something.
Yeah. I think that's great. So I mean, there's some great stuff in there, Tony, just about listening to the inspiration, right? You
Yeah,
talked about courage, about which, because it can take courage to listen to that inspiration, because it might
absolutely.
feel like it's taking you in a different direction. uh,
Mm,
and trusting in the journey, that as you move forward that you will get there, and yes, that you will have obstacles and you'll have to learn things and you'll have failures and all of that, but trusting that you have what it takes to keep going and
yeah.
achieve the idea that you were inspired by.
Yeah. And it's not going to be easy. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people, they start on their course and they tend to feel like, oh my God, it's not working out. But they need to stop, pause, and think, okay, well, maybe it's not working out as I originally planned, but what am I learning? And what can I lean
Mhm.
into? And what are the things that are ahead of me that I can maybe lean into more, to take the next step? So.
Yeah. Well, so much wisdom in here, Tony. Tell the people who are listening how to reach you, how to get in touch with you, and I'll tag you in this. But if there's particular ways you would love to engage with people, what would that be?
Fantastic. No, first of all, Rusty, this has been a great conversation. I always enjoy our conversations. And I think the best place to find me is, well, first of all, LinkedIn is always a great spot. You can find me here, but also my website, which is inspiredpurposecoach.com. You can also find out more through my podcast, Virtual Campfire, which Rusty will be featured on as well at some point soon. So hopefully you'll check that episode out. And my book is available on Amazon. It's called Climbing the Right Mountain. So I'd love to have you check it out. It's short and sweet and to the point, but I think it's a book for people to get what they need and put it into action.
Yeah, awesome. And I've read it. I highly recommend it. It is short and
Thank you.
sweet and punchy. It's got a lot of good
Thank you.
material in there, so I definitely recommend it. So, Climbing the Right Mountain on Amazon, Inspired Purpose Coach website,
Yeah.
here on LinkedIn, and the Virtual Campfire on your favorite podcast channel. So, Tony, thank you so much for this conversation and for sharing with us a little bit about the decisions you make in life and how to make those effectively.
My honor. Thank you so much, Rusty.
All right.